Picture this. You've got two 25-year-olds. Same city, same salary, same age. They both decide to start investing. Now the first one, he reads every book, tracks every single stock, spends his entire weekend analyzing earnings reports, and honestly feels incredibly smart about the whole thing. The second one, she barely even thinks about it. She blindly buys an index fund, sets it on autopilot, and maybe checks her portfolio twice a year. Well, by age 45, that second person has nearly twice the wealth of the first. And it's not because she got lucky. It's because she understood a fundamental mathematical reality of wealth building, something the industry goes out of its way to obscure.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cutting straight through the industry hype, and we're going to use cold, hard math to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about money. You see, the financial industry makes its money on complexity. They want to convince you that you need all these highly specialized products to navigate decisions that, honestly, follow a pretty clear logic. So today, we're stripping away the noise. We're relying strictly on the numbers to show you how the machine actually works.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're starting intimately with your personal wallet and then zooming all the way out to the massive global engine that controls it all. We'll hit the sequence of wealth, the tax account trap, markets and mania, the real housing reality, and finally, the invisible macro engine.
Section 1. The sequence of wealth. The ladder to financial clarity. Let's begin with the things you can actually control, establishing the absolute, mathematically optimal sequence to deploy your money. Because the truth is, agonizing over what specific stock to buy or whether to jump into real estate, those are the wrong first questions. That's like arguing about the flavor of the frosting before you've even baked the cake.
There is an actual, mathematically backed ladder for this. Step 1, a starter emergency fund of about $1,000. Why? Because without it, something as simple as a broken car alternator forces you to liquidate your investments at a loss. Step 2, capture your employer match. Step 3, wipe out toxic debt above 7%. Yeah, I'm looking at you, credit cards. Look, carrying 20% credit card debt while praying for a 10% market return, that is guaranteed financial self-sabotage. And finally, step 4, maxing out tax-advantaged accounts like the Roth IRA and 401k. The crucial takeaway here is that where you invest doesn't matter nearly as much as this exact order of operations. It protects you against premature liquidation and guaranteed negative returns. Moving on to Section 2, the tax account trap, 401k versus Roth IRA reality. Let's look at how this builds into the choice of where your money actually lives for the next 30 years. Because trust me, this isn't just some minor paperwork preference.
Choosing between a traditional 401k and a Roth IRA is a massive structural decision that can swing your retirement wealth by hundreds of thousands of dollars. The traditional 401k relies on this kind of tax illusion. You put money in pre-tax, it grows, and you feel incredibly wealthy looking at that big balance. But you don't actually own all of it. You owe the government a cut of every single dollar you withdraw later, at whatever tax rate Congress decides on 3 decades from now. The Roth IRA, on the other hand, is mathematically clean. It's tax-free growth with no required minimum distributions. You pay the taxes now on the seed, and the entire harvest is yours to keep. If you think tax rates are going up in the future, and hey, with a $35 trillion national debt, they just might, the Roth essentially buys you immunity from that uncertainty.
Now, hold on a second before you completely write off the 401k. Remember that a standard employer match is a guaranteed, instantaneous 50% return. That beats literally any market strategy on earth. If your company matches 50 cents on the dollar, that is free money. No Roth IRA, no crypto bull run, no real estate flip is going to reliably hand you a 50% return on day one before the market even opens. You capture that match before you do anything else, always. Section 3, Markets, Mania, and Math. Price versus value. Okay. Now that your personal foundation is totally locked in, let's zoom out to the broader market and look at the behavioral psychology of financial mania. Once you start investing, you're going to encounter so much noise, so much hype, and a whole lot of people who confuse dumb luck with sheer genius. It's honestly fascinating how this identical cycle of herd mentality and reflexive illusion repeats itself across totally different centuries. Think about it. In 1929, a shoeshine boy gave a hot stock tip to a banker, who smartly realized the wrong people had arrived at the party and immediately cashed out. In 1999, you had cab drivers pitching revenueless.com startups.
In 2006, a Vegas waitress was flipping multiple condos with zero income verification. It's literally the exact same mistake every generation makes, believing that just because an asset is popular, its sky-high price must somehow be justified.
During these times, everybody thinks they're the genius who can handpick the winners and avoid the crash, but let's look at the actual data. A massive study of the U.S. stock market from 1926 to 2019 revealed something wild. An index fund guarantees you own the tiny percentage of stocks that actually create wealth, specifically, just 4%. 4% of stocks accounted for all the net wealth creation of the entire market over nearly a century. The other 96%, they collectively performed no better than super-safe government bonds. If you try to handpick stocks, statistically, you are overwhelmingly likely to pick the mediocre ones. Buying an index fund doesn't require you to be a genius, it just mathematically ensures you own that crucial 4%.
The danger of manias is that you aren't actually valuing a company anymore. You're playing what John Maynard Keynes called the beauty contest. You're just blindly betting on the crowd's future enthusiasm. You aren't asking, hey, what is this actually worth based on its real earnings? Instead, you're asking, will some other guy pay me more for this ticket next Tuesday? And you know what? That works perfectly, right up until it doesn't. When the music finally stops, the people who get absolutely destroyed aren't usually the reckless gamblers. They're ordinary people who just did what society told them was a sure thing.
Section 4. The real housing reality. Breaking the 28% rule. Let's bring this all back down to earth and apply this rigorous math to the biggest purchase of your life, buying a home in 2026. The housing market right now is frankly completely distorted. Yet the industry is still using outdated rules of thumb to sell you a product. They love to use your gross income to justify a massive loan. But when you run the brutal math on your actual net income, factoring in modern rates and taxes, you instantly see why buyers are quietly drowning. The old golden rule was spending no more than 28% of your gross income on housing. So on an $80,000 salary, that's roughly $1,867 a month. But fast forward to 2026. With 7% rates, surging property taxes, insurance, and realistic maintenance, a basic $280,000 mortgage actually costs you $2,700 a month. That is 54% of your actual net take-home pay.
So, what's the stark reality here? To comfortably afford a median-priced American home today, your household income needs to stretch way, way above the national median of $80,000. You really need something closer to $130,000, maybe even $150,000, just to ensure your total housing costs stay around a safe 35% of your net take-home pay. Listen, getting approved for a mortgage by a bank and actually being able to afford to breathe in that house, those are two completely different things.
Section 5. The invisible macro engine, the global bond market. So what actually dictates those punishing mortgage rates that are locking everyone out of the housing market? Let's zoom all the way out to the invisible machinery running global finance.
It all comes down to the bond market. When central banks hike interest rates, the price of old bonds automatically drops so their fixed payouts can match the new, higher competitive yield in the market. It's a brutal seesaw. If you hold a bond paying 3%, and the government suddenly issues shiny new ones paying 5%, nobody wants your old bond. Not unless you slash the price until its effective yield hits 5%. This is exactly why you hear about bond portfolios crashing when rates rise fast. And, by the way, it's exactly what triggered the sudden collapse of regional banks like Silicon Valley Bank back in 2023. And this seesaw effect leads us directly into the infamous yield curve inversion. Think of this as a flashing red dashboard light signaling that investors are absolutely terrified of the near-term future. Normally, you get paid more interest to lock your money away for 30 years than you do for 3 months. That just makes sense. But when investors get really nervous, they rush to the safety of long-term bonds, driving those long-term yields down below the short-term rates. An inverted yield curve has preceded every single U.S. recession since 1955. It doesn't magically cause the recession, but man, it is an incredibly accurate warning light.
There's this great quote from political strategist James Carville. He said, "I used to think if there was reincarnation, I wanted to come back as the president. But now I want to come back as the bond market. You can intimidate everybody." He hit the nail on the head. The bond market is essentially a global voting mechanism. It can quietly force governments into austerity or cause regional banks to collapse in literally 48 hours. Politicians can give all the speeches they want and pass all the laws they want, but the bond market cuts straight through the political theater. If investors lose trust in a country's fiscal discipline, they dump its bonds, yields spike, borrowing becomes cripplingly expensive, and that country is forced to change course. It's the invisible force that disciplines the entire world.
And when you have a debt load this massive, rolling over old debt at today's higher interest rates changes the math for the entire global economy. The U.S. government is currently spending over $1 trillion a year just on interest payments. They have to constantly issue new bonds at these higher rates just to pay off the old debt that's maturing. And because U.S. Treasuries act as the global risk-free benchmark, meaning every other asset on Earth is priced against them, this changing math ripples through to your mortgage, your car loan, and the health of the everyday businesses in your community.
So as we wrap up this explainer, when you look at your very next major financial decision, I want you to ask yourself one absolutely vital question. Whether you're deciding on your retirement accounts, picking an investment strategy, evaluating a house you feel pressure to buy, or just reacting to the latest macro panic, ask yourself, are you letting the industry, the media, and the people around you anchor your expectations? Or are you running the real math, prioritizing the proper sequence, and looking at the actual evidence? Because knowing the difference isn't about just being smarter than everyone else, it's about what you do when everyone around you is absolutely certain they're right. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking at the numbers. Thanks so much for joining me.